Stewardess slaps black billionaire's daughter. Minutes later, the airline CEO steps in. The slap echoed across the first-class cabin like a gunshot. Passengers froze mid-sip, mid-sentence. A stewardess in her late 40s with a name tag that read Rhonda stood over a stunned young woman, her hands still suspended mid-air. The red mark on the girl's cheek bloomed instantly. The only sound was the hum of the aircraft engines and the slow, stunned intake of breath from those who had witnessed it. "You're not supposed to be here!" Rhonda barked, her voice quivering with rage. Or was it fear? "This area is reserved for paid first-class passengers." Nia Caldwell blinked through the sting. She looked barely 20, her smooth, dark skin radiant even under the harsh cabin lights, her braids pulled into a tidy, low bun. She wasn't dressed like a typical billionaire's daughter. Simple black jeans, a Yale sweatshirt and sneakers. She didn't scream money, but she did radiate something else, quiet authority. "I have a valid boarding pass," Nia said calmly, reaching into her crossbody bag. "You people always think you can just walk in and take whatever you want," Rhonda snapped, grabbing Nia's wrist before she could pull out the document. Gasps rose from the nearby passengers. One man started recording. Nia didn't flinch. She stared Rhonda down, her eyes hard now. "You just hit a passenger." "You laid hands on me without cause." "I laid hands on a liar," Rhonda snarled. "You forged that ticket, didn't you?" Nia exhaled slowly, trying to stay composed. She looked to the side, past the stewardess, to a young male flight attendant standing awkwardly near the galley. He looked torn, unsure. "Trevor," Nia said, reading his name badge. "Please scan my boarding pass." Rhonda turned to him sharply. "Don't you touch that! I'll handle this." But Trevor hesitated. "Maybe we should just check it, Rhonda." "Just to be safe." Rhonda shot him a death glare. "Do you want to be written up again?" That made Trevor freeze. Nia, meanwhile, had already pulled out her phone and opened the digital version of her first-class boarding pass. She held it out. "Scan it." A middle-aged man across the aisle spoke up. "If she says she's got a pass, just scan it." "You can't slap someone over a seat." "Stay out of this," Rhonda snapped. Too late. Several passengers had pulled out their phones now. Someone muttered, "She's done." Another whispered, "Is she crazy?" Rhonda, flustered but still defiant, ignored them all. Nia sat still, eyes locked on Rhonda. "I suggest you scan this. Or, if you prefer, we can land this plane early and deal with the lawsuit on the ground." Trevor finally took a shaky step forward, reached for her phone and scanned it. A soft beep, a green check mark. "Verified." He paled. "It's real." "First class, seat 2A. Nia turned slowly to look at Rhonda. "You just assaulted a customer who was seated exactly where she was supposed to be." Silence. Rhonda's face turned ashen. But before she could say anything, the intercom crackled. "Good evening, passengers. This is Captain Nolan speaking. We've just been contacted by corporate. We'll have a special visitor from our executive team meeting us at the gate upon landing." Nia smiled faintly. That was quicker than she expected. Just 30 minutes earlier, Nia had arrived at the private lounge of Billionaire, traveling solo for the first time under a commercial booking. It was part of a trial her father, Silas Caldwell, majority stakeholder of Dominion, had requested. He wanted to assess the treatment average black travelers received on his airline. "Go undercover," he'd told her. "See how they treat you without the name, without the gloss. Then we'll know what we need to fix." So she booked anonymously. No VIP flag on the account, no executive alert, just a full-priced first-class ticket under the name Nia Caldwell. And now? It didn't take long to see exactly what her father feared, but this wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Nia's fingers hovered over her phone. She hadn't called her father yet. She didn't have to. Dominion Air's internal monitoring system flagged any incident involving first-class passengers, especially when a stewardess used force. By now, the system had sent a trigger to the executive suite. And if she knew her father, and his notoriously reactive CEO, Alice Kingston, heads were already rolling. Back in the cabin, Rhonda's posture had changed. She stood stiffly by the galley, arms folded, jaw clenched. Trevor sat crouched near the emergency jump seat, clearly shaken. Nia looked out the window, calm again. A passenger leaned across the aisle. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said. "People like her are why systems need accountability." "You want me to send the video somewhere?" the man offered. "Keep it," Nia replied. "You might want it when this story blows up." Because it would. Not just because she was a black woman wronged, but because she was the daughter of the man who owned the airline. And the people about to walk down the jet bridge had no idea what was coming next. The moment the wheels touched down at JFK, the cabin buzzed with tension. Flight attendants began unbuckling, whispering among themselves. Rhonda paced at the front like a caged animal, her lips tight and jaw clenched, clearly hoping for a miracle, or at least a cover-up. Nia remained in her seat, calm but hyper-aware. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. Her father had built Dominion Air to be one of the most secure, responsive companies in the industry, especially when it came to internal incidents. By now, the alert system had already done its job. As the plane taxied toward the gate, a new voice came over the intercom, different from the captain's usual tone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Grant. Please remain seated after arrival. There will be a brief delay as our executive team boards for an internal matter. Thank you for your cooperation." Passengers glanced at each other in confusion. Rhonda's face drained of color. Trevor's eyes darted to Nia, then to the front galley. Nia finally picked up her phone, unlocked it, and tapped open a message from her father that had come through mid-flight. "Already at the terminal." "Alice is coming on board. Alice Kingston, CEO of Dominion Air, known in the industry as a fixer with zero tolerance for scandal. The kind of leader who fired an entire regional staff when a pilot refused to fly a disabled veteran last year. Rhonda didn't stand a chance. The jet bridge docked." The door cracked open with a hiss, and then came the click of heels, sharp, deliberate, unfazed by turbulence or nerves. Alice Kingston stepped onto the plane like she owned the sky. A statuesque white woman in her 50s, with perfectly combed platinum blonde hair, a tailored navy pantsuit, and eyes that cut straight through lies. She didn't glance at the passengers. She didn't greet the crew. She walked straight down the first-class aisle and stopped beside Nia. "Miss Caldwell," she said, voice cool. "May I?" Nia nodded. "Of course." Alice turned to Rhonda, who had gone pale and rigid by the wall. "Is your name Rhonda Simmons?" "Yes, ma'am," Rhonda replied, trying to steady her voice. Alice gave no reaction. "We received the cabin footage and internal report 34 minutes ago. That's how long you've had to reflect on your decision to strike a passenger." Rhonda's voice cracked. I thought she was..." "She had a verified first-class ticket. You never scanned it. You made assumptions based on what, Rhonda?" Silence. Alice's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I'll be blunt," she said. "You are relieved of duty, your badge and credentials, now." "Wait, please." "I've been flying for 21 years. And in 21 years, Alice said evenly, you still haven't learned how to treat passengers with dignity." A few passengers gasped softly. Rhonda began to fumble with her lanyard, her hands trembling. Nia stood up, her eyes locking with Rhonda's. "You didn't just slap a customer," she said. "You made it clear that women who look like me aren't welcome in spaces like this unless we prove ourselves twice." Rhonda's face twisted. You people act like victims even when you're the ones in power. Alice stepped forward.
Stop, now. Trevor finally spoke. I told her to scan it.
She threatened to write me up again if I did. Alice turned to him. We'll speak in a moment, but thank you for stepping forward. Nia added quietly. He's the only one who tried to do the right thing. Alice nodded, then turned back to Rhonda.
You'll be escorted from the premises. Legal will contact you.
But this is crazy, Rhonda cried. She's just some rich kid pretending. She's the daughter of Silas Caldwell, Alice interrupted. Owner of this airline. Gasps filled the cabin, and in that moment Rhonda's legs gave way. She slumped into the jump seat, eyes wide. You didn't even stop to ask her name, Alice said. You just saw her skin and assumed. Security boarded silently. One officer held out his hand. Rhonda, defeated, handed over her ID and wings. As she was led down the aisle, passengers stared. Some shook their heads. Others looked away, uncomfortable. But one woman, an older black passenger in economy, stood up as Rhonda passed. Her voice rang clear. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before raising your hand against someone's child. Outside, in the terminal, a crowd had gathered. Someone had already leaked the incident to a local reporter. A man with a camera was live streaming. Hashtags were trending. Rhonda's humiliation wasn't over. Back on the plane, Alice took a deep breath. I'd like to speak to you in private, Nia. Nia followed her into the business class galley. You all right? Alice asked. I'm okay, shaken, but I knew something like this might happen. That's why I flew anonymously. Alice studied her. Your father trusted you to do this. You handled it with incredible restraint. I wasn't going to expose myself unless it got out of hand. It got out of hand the second she touched you. Nia paused. This isn't just about me. How many people have gone through this without a last name to protect them? Alice nodded slowly. Then help us change it. Tell your father we need to overhaul training and accountability top to bottom. No more unchecked authority. I already planned to. Alice touched her shoulder. Good. Because this can't be another PR recovery. It has to be a reckoning. As the plane began to deboard, whispers and phone cameras followed near. Some passengers smiled. Others nodded in quiet support. But Nia kept walking, straight-backed and unflinching. This wasn't about revenge. This was the beginning of a much bigger war. The moment Nia stepped off the plane and into the terminal, a wall of murmurs greeted her like a quiet wave. She kept her head high, resisting the urge to glance at the cell phones pointed in her direction. A few people whispered her name, mostly incorrectly. That's the girl the flight attendant slapped. Isn't she someone important? Like crazy rich? She's Silas Caldwell's daughter, man. The Dominion guy. By the time she exited through the private security corridor, Nia's phone had already lit up with dozens of missed calls, texts, and media alerts. But she wasn't interested in attention. Not yet. She had something else on her mind. Her father. Silas Caldwell was already waiting in the executive lounge, dressed in a crisp black turtleneck and charcoal grey slacks. A man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. Nia recognized the storm brewing in his eyes even before she reached him. You didn't tell me it had escalated to that, he said quietly. I needed it to happen on its own, Nia replied. You showing up too soon would have looked like a cover-up. Silas gave a slow nod, lips pressed together. You handled it well. Alice told me everything. Nia hesitated. I don't want this to be another corporate scandal that dies in a week. I want real change. That woman didn't just hit me. She humiliated me because she thought I didn't belong. She's already gone. But if you're looking for deeper reform, that's a different battlefield. I'm ready. Silas arched a brow, then turned to the assistant who had been silently waiting behind him. Have Dominic draft a full audit request on staff conduct reports from the last 2 years. I want it by morning. Right away, sir. Just then, Nia's phone buzzed again. A message from Trevor, the flight attendant who tried to intervene. Hey, I don't know if this is okay, but could we talk? I didn't sleep last night. She looked up. I think I should talk to someone who was in the middle of it too. You want me to arrange something? I'll meet him myself. Alone. Silas didn't look pleased but nodded. Just be careful, he said. Not everyone is who they appear to be. They met later that evening at a quiet cafe in Harlem, far from the glitz of airport lounges and boardrooms. Trevor was already there when she arrived, nervously nursing a coffee. He stood as she approached. Thanks for coming, he said, eyes sincere. I didn't know what else to do. You did the right thing. That's more than most. He looked down at his hands. Rhonda made it clear that if I didn't back her up, she'd report me. I needed the job. But I kept thinking, what if you hadn't been who you are? Nia sat across from him. Then I would have been just another passenger kicked off a flight. No headlines, no justice. Trevor nodded. This isn't the first time she's done something like this. That made Nia freeze. Wait, you're telling me there were others? Trevor leaned forward, voice low. There's a steward named Alana who used to work international flights. Rhonda pushed her to transfer after accusing her of being too friendly with black passengers. And one time, she downgraded a woman and her son because she didn't believe their tickets were real. Nia's stomach turned. Why didn't anyone report her?
Because she was protected. Her cousin's in HR.
The pieces started falling into place. This wasn't just a rogue employee. It was a symptom of something bigger. I need names, Nia said. Trevor blinked. What? If you want to help fix this, give me names, incidents, dates. Anything you remember. We're going to expose it all. You're serious. I'm tired of people like Rhonda thinking they can get away with it just because they know how to smile for corporate headshots. Trevor nodded slowly, then pulled out a small notebook. I started writing things down. Thought maybe one day I'd need it. Guess today's that day. They spent the next hour combing through notes, names, and stories. Each one felt like a weight pressing harder on Nia's chest. But beneath that weight, there was a fire growing. As they parted ways, Trevor looked more hopeful than when she'd arrived. Thank you, he said. Most people wouldn't care. I'm not most people. Nia watched him disappear into the city, then turned her collar up against the wind. For the first time in days, she felt something stronger than anger. Purpose. Back at Dominion headquarters, Alice was already waiting when Silas entered the boardroom. She stood at the massive screen displaying security logs and crew evaluation charts. Your daughter wants to go deeper, she said. I know, and she's right. Alice clicked a remote, pulling up a spreadsheet. We found inconsistencies in 5 departments. 3 of them connected to Rhonda. This goes higher than we thought. Silas crossed his arms. Then it's time we clean house. But not quietly. No PR spin. No. Let it be loud. Let people know we're not tolerating this anymore. As Alice closed the file, she gave him a look. She's more like you than you realize. Silas didn't respond immediately, but a slight smile tugged at his lips. She's better. He turned to the window, gazing out at the city skyline glowing in the night. This isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about rebuilding trust, and I think she's the one who can lead that. Alice watched him in silence, then said, Then let's follow her lead. Because this wasn't just about one slap on a plane. It was about every moment that went ignored. And now, the silence was breaking. Nia stood just outside the Dominion Aviation headquarters the next morning, staring up at the mirrored glass facade. Her reflection shimmered against the polished exterior, poised, calm, but carrying a storm beneath. The night before had left her restless. Every story Trevor shared had replayed in her head like a scratched record. She wasn't here just to talk anymore. As she pushed through the double doors, a familiar voice caught her ear. "Miss Caldwell, the board's in the main conference room." Alice Chen, Dominion's COO and her father's longtime confidant, fell into step beside her. "I hope you're ready," Alice said softly. "I was born ready," Nia replied. "Let's give them a reason to remember this meeting." Inside, the atmosphere was stiffer than usual. The board members, mostly older white men in tailored suits, sat with polite impatience. Some offered her smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Others barely acknowledged her. At the head of the table sat Silas Caldwell, expression unreadable, hands folded. Nia walked to the center of the room, holding nothing but a thin folder. No slideshow. No PR briefing. Just facts. "I won't waste your time," she began, letting her voice carry across the table. "You've all seen the footage. You know what happened to me on Flight 293. But this isn't about me. It's about a system inside this company that enables discrimination, punishes whistleblowers, and silences victims." One man, Harold Kinsey, leaned forward. "Ms. Caldwell, this feels more like a personal vendetta than a business issue." Nia locked eyes with him. "You're right. It is personal, but it's also professional. When one of your employees assaults a passenger because she doesn't look the part, that's not just a PR problem. That's a structural failure." She opened the folder and slid a stack of printed reports down the table. "These are internal complaints from the past 3 years. Most involve minority passengers or employees. None were escalated. Most were dismissed within 48 hours. Some by HR managers who share last names with the offenders." The room grew silent. "I have statements from 3 former flight attendants, one of whom was bullied out of her job after standing up to this behavior. I have receipts, video clips, eyewitness accounts." Alice stepped forward, dropping a second file. "We've verified every single one." Harold cleared his throat. "Even if what you say is true, we have to consider the financial risk of airing this publicly." Investors, Nia interrupted. "Don't want to back a company riddled with racism. You want numbers? Here's one. Dominion lost over 20 million in bookings after last quarter's PR crisis involving gate agent profiling. You think another scandal is going to go unnoticed?" Silas, still quiet, finally raised a hand. "Enough," he said, voice steady. "I brought my daughter into this boardroom today because I believe in her judgment. If anyone here doubts her integrity, speak now." No one spoke. He turned to Nia. "What do you propose?" She took a breath. "A complete overhaul of the crew evaluation and complaint process. A third-party ombudsman. Training that's more than a checkbox on a form, and a public commitment, one that comes from the top, that Dominion will not protect abusers under the guise of loyalty." Harold muttered, "Sounds expensive." Nia gave a tight smile. "Not as expensive as a class action lawsuit." The room fell into thoughtful silence. Finally, Silas leaned back. "We'll vote. Today. No delays." As heads nodded and murmurs broke out, Nia walked toward the door, but paused as Harold muttered behind her, "She only gets away with this because she's your daughter." She turned slowly, eyes cool. "I get away with this because I'm right." Later that afternoon, Nia sat alone in her father's office, scrolling through messages. Her inbox was flooded. Supporters, journalists, former employees sharing their own stories. It was overwhelming but necessary. Alice entered quietly. The board approved the reforms. Unanimous vote. Nia exhaled. Even Kinsey? He abstained, but he didn't block it. Nia looked out the window, watching the planes take off from the private runway below. I don't want to be the face of a movement. I just want people to feel safe flying with us. Alice smiled. You might not want to be the face, but you've become the voice. Before Nia could respond, her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. You don't know who you're messing with. Keep digging and you'll regret it. She showed it to Alice. You expected this, right? Alice asked. Of course, Nia said, slipping the phone into her pocket. But they should have sent that message before I had a microphone. Across town, in a modest brick apartment complex in Queens, Trevor returned home and found a slip of paper taped to his door. Leave it alone. No signature, just black marker on torn notebook paper. He looked around. The hallway was quiet, but the fear settled in quickly. What had he gotten himself into? Still, he didn't tear the note down. He folded it neatly and placed it on the kitchen table beside Nia's business card. And then, he picked up the phone. Because something told him, they were only scratching the surface. Nia tapped her pen against her notebook as she sat across from Trevor in the back of a small Brooklyn coffee shop. The air smelled of burnt espresso and baked pastries, but neither of them had touched their drinks. Trevor looked tense, his eyes darting to the window every few seconds. He'd called her early that morning, his voice trembling. There was a note taped to my door, he said now, low enough that only she could hear. No name? Just a warning? Nia leaned in. You're sure it wasn't just some prank? Trevor shook his head. This wasn't a joke, and it wasn't the first time. Last week someone followed me home from my shift. I thought I imagined it, but now... She scribbled something in her notebook. They're trying to silence you. What if they succeed? Trevor's voice cracked. I don't have your security or your father's name. I'm just a guy who served drinks on a plane. Nia's tone was firm. You're the guy who stood up for me when no one else did. That means something. I won't let them bury you. Across town, inside a shadowed conference room at Dominion's HR headquarters, a meeting was underway, one not listed on the official calendar. 3 executives sat together, tense, whispering in clipped tones. One of them was Bennett Rhodes, Dominion's director of flight operations. The same man who'd brushed off a dozen crew misconduct claims in the past year. She's pushing too hard, he muttered, flipping through a report with Nia's name highlighted. The board may have approved her proposal, but she's making waves far beyond what Silas ever intended. You think Caldwell's losing control of her? Asked Julia Marsh, head of internal legal shand. Or using her, the third man said, voice low. Either way, we need to get ahead of this. Julia folded her arms. We're sitting on years of buried reports. If she digs deeper, this could become a federal problem. Bennett smirked. Then we make her the problem. Back in Brooklyn, Nia and Trevor had moved to a quieter table in the corner. She pulled out her iPad and opened a folder labeled Ground Crew Intel. Dozens of documents appeared. Some leaked, some legally obtained through whistleblower contacts she'd been cultivating over the past few weeks. Trevor stared at the screen. Where did you get all this? You'd be amazed how fast doors open when you stop knocking and start pushing. One file in particular caught his eye, a crew log from a 2022 incident out of LAX. A black passenger, elderly, was accused of carrying a fraudulent ID. Security had been called, there was no follow-up, no apology. Just a note, handled by senior staff, File closed. "That was Marcus Gaines," Trevor said quietly. "He came back to the galley that day shaking. Said he'd been treated like a criminal." Nia nodded. "There's a pattern. Certain crew members, certain routes, certain passengers." Trevor's jaw clenched. "They knew. And they kept flying them anyway." Nia looked up at him. "I want to go public. We do it right. This blows the lid off everything." "You sure?" Trevor asked. "Because once this is out, there's no taking it back. I've never been more sure of anything." But neither of them noticed the man in the booth behind them, quietly slipping out the door. Later that evening, Silas Caldwell sat alone in his private study, nursing a glass of whiskey. A manila envelope had been delivered to his house with no return address. Inside were printed photos, blurry but clear enough. Nia and Trevor. "The documents, the coffee shop." He picked up his phone. "You said you'd protect the company," he said into the receiver. "Do it." The next morning, the story broke, but not the one Nia had planned. Dominion's internal comms email lit up inboxes across the country. Former steward Trevor Lane suspended pending investigation, accused of falsifying maintenance records and unauthorized sharing of confidential files. Nia read the email with growing disbelief. Within minutes, Trevor's phone went dark. Voicemail, then disconnected. She slammed her laptop shut and grabbed her keys. She found him in Queens, at his apartment, sitting on the edge of his bed, pale and stunned. "They said I jeopardized passenger safety. That I fabricated stories. HR left a message saying I'm under criminal review." "They're framing you," Nia said. "They're building a narrative to discredit us before we can speak." Trevor looked up. "What do we do now?" Nia's answer came without hesitation. "We fight back, and we don't wait for permission." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Hi, this is Nia Caldwell. I'd like to book a press conference." Later that night, as the city pulsed with late summer heat and sirens echoed in the distance, Nia stood by her window, watching the skyline. Her father hadn't returned her calls. She knew why. If Silas had received that envelope, he would see her as a threat now, not just a daughter with a point to prove. For the first time, the war was no longer private. And she wouldn't be fighting it alone. The press room buzzed with anticipation. Cameras clicked, journalists whispered, and the low hum of tension hovered like a storm about to break. Nia adjusted the microphone on the podium, trying not to let her fingers tremble. She wore a navy suit, minimal makeup, and a steady gaze that didn't betray the fire behind it. Trevor stood to her left, pale but resolute, a printed statement shaking slightly in his hand. Behind them, a screen displayed a bold title in white letters: "When Silence Costs Lives, The Truth About Dominion Airlines." Nia took a breath and stepped forward. "This isn't just about one incident. This is about a pattern, systemic neglect, targeted mistreatment, and the silencing of those who dare to speak up. Trevor Lane was suspended without due process, but the truth is he was punished for telling the truth." The cameras surged forward. A reporter raised her hand. "Miss Caldwell, are you speaking on behalf of your father's company?" "My name may be Caldwell," she said, her voice sharp. "But I'm not here to protect legacies. I'm here to protect the truth." That answer would haunt the boardroom by noon. Back at Dominion headquarters, Silas Caldwell stood in front of a TV in his private suite, fists clenched. The press conference was airing live, and every word from Nia's mouth felt like a chisel cracking his empire's foundation. Beside him, Bennett Rhodes tried to keep his tone steady. "She's forcing our hand." Silas didn't respond immediately. Then, softly, "She's not going to stop." "No, sir," Bennett replied, "but we can make her stop." That night, Nia returned to her apartment to find the front door ajar. Her heart dropped. She pushed it open slowly, her keys gripped like a weapon. Inside, nothing was stolen, but everything was out of place. Her files, scattered. Her laptop, gone. The wall above her couch had one message, scrawled in thick black ink across a torn page from her notebook. You speak again. You disappear. Trevor arrived 20 minutes later and froze when he saw the mess. They're trying to rattle you, he said. They know you're close. I'm not rattled, Nia said, though her breath trembled. I'm pissed. She turned to him. Tomorrow, we go bigger. The next day, a series of leaked videos surfaced on a small independent media platform known for breaking whistleblower stories. Footage from body cams, mobile devices, and even internal Dominion training sessions. In one clip, a senior flight attendant laughed while mimicking a passenger's accent. Another showed a black woman being removed from first class despite holding a verified ticket. Then came the clip that would go viral within hours, a cabin crew member mocking a child in a wheelchair, captured during boarding. Social media exploded. Ground Dominion trended worldwide. Celebrities retweeted. Politicians weighed in. Passengers shared their own stories, hundreds of them. Nia and Trevor watched it unfold in real time. It wasn't just about them anymore. But just as the tide turned in their favor, Dominion counterattacked. Late that night, Nia received an urgent call from a journalist contact. Word is, Dominion's legal team just filed for an emergency injunction. They're trying to sue you both for defamation and breach of company confidentiality. Nia didn't flinch. Let them. The next morning, a black SUV pulled up to her apartment building. To her surprise, it wasn't the police. It was her father. Silas Caldwell stepped out, looking older than she'd ever seen him. No security. No entourage. Just a father and a man who'd built an empire on silence. You have 10 minutes, Nia said, standing on the steps. Silas didn't waste time. You've made your point. You've made your noise. But if this continues, there won't be a company left to fix. You're burning it down. Nia crossed her arms. Then maybe it needs to burn. Silas took a slow breath. There are people who don't care about justice or legacy. They only care about what you're threatening to expose, and they're not bound by family. She stared at him. Is that a warning? It's the only protection I can offer, he said quietly. Then, almost reluctantly, he added, I never wanted it to come to this. She watched him walk away, the weight of decades in his steps. But what Silas didn't know, what no one knew, was that Nia had already made her final move. That night, she uploaded every file she had to a secure digital vault, accessible only with a biometric key and one password. Truth will fly. She didn't plan to hide anymore. She planned to finish what she started. And the next morning, the CEO of Dominion Airlines was served with a federal subpoena. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled. Reporters lined the back wall, their cameras ready, fingers twitching above record buttons. The air was dense with tension, and the unspoken anticipation of a showdown years in the making. At the plaintiff's table sat Nia Caldwell, poised and collected in a black blazer, her natural curls pulled into a tight bun. Beside her sat Trevor Lane, a fire in his eyes despite the fatigue from months of legal warfare. At the defense table sat Bennett Rhodes, representing Dominion Airlines. His tailored suit couldn't hide the beads of sweat forming along his hairline. And seated just behind him, arms folded, was Silas Caldwell, his face unreadable. What no one knew was that Nia had one last card to play. The judge entered. Court is now in session. Testimonies began. Passenger after passenger took the stand, each sharing a version of the same theme: mistreatment, discrimination, silencing. The jury listened. The judge nodded. The defense scrambled to poke holes. But the day turned when Nia herself stood and walked to the witness stand. "I didn't come here today as someone trying to destroy an airline," she began, her voice firm but emotional. "I came here because I watched too many people get hurt, get humiliated, and be told they were just imagining it." Her eyes swept across the room. "I'm the daughter of the man who built Dominion. But that doesn't mean I'll be complicit in its decay. We don't fix things by pretending they're not broken." The courtroom hushed as her words echoed. Even Silas leaned forward slightly. Then the defense tried to strike back. "Nia Caldwell," Bennett stood, trying to regain control. "Isn't it true you had access to confidential company files, and that you deliberately leaked those to the media?" Nia didn't blink. "Yes, because they documented crimes and cover-ups." "And you know it. You broke the law." "No," she said, fire rising. "I upheld it when your team wouldn't." The judge raised a hand to stop the back and forth. "That's enough. Let the jury decide." But as the court prepared to recess, a quiet commotion stirred at the door. 2 men in suits entered. Behind them, a federal marshal. They walked directly to the judge and handed over a sealed envelope. A moment later, the judge cleared his throat. "Due to new evidence provided by the Department of Transportation's Civil Rights Division, this court is issuing a temporary injunction on Dominion Airlines operations until further investigation is complete." A gasp rippled through the room. "What is this?" Bennett asked, rising in shock. "It's over," Nia said, almost whispering. "They're finally seeing it." But there was one twist left. As the courtroom emptied, Silas approached his daughter alone. His voice was quiet, almost resigned. "You burned it down," he said. She looked him straight in the eye. "No, Dad. I cleared the runway." Then Silas did something no one expected. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a flash drive. "What's this?" "A backup of everything," he said. "Board memos. Security logs, employee complaints, things I wasn't supposed to keep, but I did." Nia stared at him. "Why?" He took a long breath. "Because I knew one day someone would have the courage to finish what I couldn't." Nia's hand closed around the flash drive. For a second, father and daughter stood in silence. 2 people separated by decades of choices, finally meeting at a point of truth. Back outside the courthouse, crowds waited. Cameras flashed. Reporters surged forward. "Nia, what's next?" She didn't hesitate. "What's next is accountability. What's next is justice. And what's next is making sure that no girl, no matter the color of her skin or the size of her bank account, ever gets slapped into silence again." The crowd roared. Trevor appeared at her side, smiling. "You ready for this?" Nia looked out at the skyline, the world watching. "I was born ready." But just as she turned away, a quiet voice called out behind her. "Miss Caldwell?" She turned. A little black girl, no older than 10, stood holding her mother's hand. She wore a pilot's jacket, oversized but full of pride. "I want to fly someday, like you." Nia knelt down, smiling with tears in her eyes. "You will, sweetheart. And when you do, you make sure no one tells you where you don't belong." Then she stood and walked forward, not just as a whistleblower or a daughter or a survivor, but as a symbol of what happens when the truth finally gets to take off. The morning after the court ruling, headlines blazed across every major news outlet in the country. "Whistleblower Nia Caldwell grounds Dominion Airlines." "Billionaire's daughter exposes racism in skies." "Slapped into silence? Not anymore." But inside the Caldwell estate in Atlanta, things were much quieter. Nia stood in her father's office, the same room where she'd once been scolded for speaking out, now transformed into a war room of change. Files were spread across the table, legal documents, policy drafts. Letters from former employees thanking her for giving them a voice. She leaned back, took a breath, and stared out the window. Trevor entered, holding 2 coffees. "You didn't sleep again, huh?" "I couldn't," she admitted. "Too much running through my head." He handed her a cup. "You did it, Nia." Dominion has to answer to the federal government now. Pilots are organizing. Other whistleblowers are stepping up. "This thing is bigger than us now." "That's exactly what scares me," she said quietly. "It's bigger. And if we don't handle it right, they'll turn me into a headline and forget the message." Trevor smiled. "Then let's make sure they don't." Just then, her phone buzzed. A video had gone viral. Footage from the courtroom, her final words to the crowd, the little girl in the pilot's jacket, their conversation, had been clipped and shared on every platform. Comments poured in by the thousands. Hashtags were trending. Even celebrities were reposting her speech, calling her a modern-day Rosa Parks of the skies. But the most surprising message came from within. Her father. Silas Caldwell had posted a public letter. It read, "For too long, I prioritized legacy over integrity. My daughter reminded me that the two are not mutually exclusive. I failed as a leader. She did not. If Dominion survives, it will be because of her. If it falls, it deserved to." The world was stunned. So was Nia. That afternoon, a press conference was held outside Dominion headquarters. Cameras flashed as Silas stepped up to the podium, with Nia beside him. He looked out at the sea of reporters and said the words no one ever expected to hear. "I am stepping down as CEO of Dominion Airlines, effective immediately, and appointing Nia Caldwell to take my place." The crowd gasped. Even Nia froze. "What?" "You earned it," Silas said quietly. "And it's the only way to prove we're serious about change." As the crowd erupted into applause, Nia took the mic, her voice strong and unwavering. "I didn't fight for a title," she said. "I fought because the skies shouldn't belong to the privileged few. Every person deserves to feel safe, seen, and respected, whether they're wearing a pilot's uniform or sitting in seat 28C. She paused, her eyes searching the faces before her. "This is not just about race. It's about dignity. And we're just getting started." Reporters called out questions, flashes popped, but Nia was already walking away. Because she had work to do. 3 weeks later, new safety and anti-discrimination policies were rolled out across the airline. Anonymous reporting systems were launched. Crew members involved in prior incidents were either retrained or terminated. And the stewardess who slapped her? Publicly dismissed, and offered the chance to apologize in a televised interview. She refused. But that was okay, because it was never about the slap. It was about what followed. And what followed was a movement. Nia's story became a case study at universities. Airlines across the country began re-evaluating internal practices. And little black girls started showing up to airports wearing pilot jackets with her name on the back. One day, as she waited for her own flight, not as a passenger, not as an executive, but just as herself, she saw a young flight attendant approach her. "Miss Caldwell?" the woman asked nervously. "Yes? I just wanted to say thank you. I used to be scared to speak up about things I saw on flights. Now I'm not." "Because you weren't," Nia smiled. "Then I did my job." The boarding call echoed over the speakers. She grabbed her bag and headed toward the gate. As she walked down the jet bridge, she looked back once, took it all in, the journey, the pain, the justice, the healing, and then she disappeared into the cabin. not as the daughter of a billionaire, not as the woman who took down an empire, but as someone who refused to be quiet, who turned a moment of humiliation into a lifetime of purpose, because justice doesn't fly itself. It needs someone in the cockpit, someone like Nia Caldwell. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you rethink the way we treat each other, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment below. Your voice matters, and together we can keep stories like this flying high.